You see, if you pull at a chain, it always breaks at the weakest link. Always. The weakest link could be at one end, the middle, the other end. It's your heart, your brain, your liver, your kidneys, your blood sugar regulating system. It doesn't matter. Wherever the weak link is, you pull on the chain, that's where it's going to break. And the pull on the chain is inflammation, without exception. The CDC tells us that 14 of the 15 top causes of death today are chronic inflammatory diseases. It's always inflammation, except for unintentional injuries, accidents. Everything else is a chronic inflammatory disease. Type 1 diabetes, autoimmune diseases are chronic inflammatory diseases.
Welcome to the Type 1 and Midlife podcast. My name is Melissa Slemp, a certified nutritional health coach and the founder and CEO of Abundant Health with Melissa, where I help women with type 1 diabetes to feel more empowered and live their best life despite their diagnosis. Each week, I will bring conversations and strategies from guest experts and my experience living with type 1 for over 40 years now. So if you're a woman ready to redefine how diabetes can look and feel for you, then the Type 1 and Midlife podcast is the show for you. Well, welcome to today's episode. I'm excited to bring Dr. Tom O'Brien in. He's an expert in food sensitivities, toxins, and autoimmune diseases. Dr. O'Brien, known as the Sherlock Holmes for chronic disease, holds teaching faculty positions with the Institute for Functional Medicine and the National University of Health Sciences. He is the author of You Can Fix Your Brain and the Autoimmune Fix. And today he shares insights on how environmental toxins affect conditions like diabetes and obesity and other chronic diseases, and learn about chemical exposure and EMF, and discover practical steps to protect your health. And don't miss out Dr. Bryan's valuable advice of real important stuff that we need to know to better managing diabetes in the face of environmental toxins. And stay tuned for a special invitation to access his free docuseries called The Inflammation Equation, where you'll get even more information. Today, we just touched the surface, but you get a chance to get access to this free docuseries that he has open and ready for you to sign up for free. So more to see on that, and you can see more details about how to get access to this docuseries right here in the show notes. Well, we hope you enjoy this show, and please reach out. This can be a very interesting topic. A lot of people have questions about environmental toxins and how it is impacting many areas of our life, especially when we're already dealing with a chronic disease. So again, we enjoy and share the show as well. Nothing you hear on this Type 1 and Midlife podcast should be a substitute for professional medical advice. Please always consult your doctor before changing your diet, insulin dosages, or healthcare plan. Well, hello, we are back in here this week, and today I have the pleasure of talking to Dr. Tom O'Brien. Well, welcome, Dr. Tom.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes. And this is a topic, like we were just talking about before we hit record, that maybe my community doesn't have on it's not front and center on their minds as far as how it's maybe impacting their health, their hormones, blood sugar, and all this. But as you're going to allude and give us more information about, this is a very important topic for all of us. And yeah, I'm real excited to just unpack this. So what inspired you? I can sense the passion and sharing the truth and this real important information that we all need to be aware of. So what was, how did it start for you?
Well, it started my first week in my medical education. The first week, I knew absolutely nothing. I was living on campus, feeling kind of lost. I hadn't been in school in a few years at that point. And I saw that Dr. Sheldon Deal, Mr. Arizona, was going to be talking on campus Wednesday night. And I thought, oh, great, I'll go listen to Mr. Arizona. The guy's a bodybuilder. He's going to be healthy. Okay. And I went to listen, and this was January of 1978.
Mhm.
And there was a color television in the room, and he turned it on, and he left the volume off, but he turned on, and color televisions were pretty new then.
Mhm.
It was a new thing. He walked over to a table, opened his briefcase, and took out a bar magnet the size of an iPhone.
Mm.
And he held it like a policeman holds a flashlight. And he walked up to the television, and the picture turned upside down. And he
Mm.
walked away and it went right side up. And he walked towards it and it went upside down. And he walked away and it went right side up. And he said, that's what electromagnetic pollution does to your brain and your nervous system.
Mm.
Those are people that say left when they mean right. They write the
Mm.
number 3 backwards. They put the E before
Mm.
I before E, except after C. They put the E before I. They just do it. It's called neurological switching.
Mm.
And it's a negative impact from electromagnetic pollution. Now, this was 1978, and he was concerned about batteries in watches
Mm.
back then. That's the only
Mm.
electromagnetic pollution that was not only, but the primary one on his
Primary.
mind.
Mhm.
And we've learned so much, but that started me off with what? What?
Mm.
Then the next week, there was a talk by Dr. Kirpal Singh, a medical doctor from Los Angeles, who was talking about electroacupuncture by Vol. Okay, I don't know what that is. And he talked about this instrument where he puts it on acupuncture points and it registers an electrical current. And the
Mm.
machine, this was early computers in the machines, would tell you what it all meant. So he told the case study of a 44-year-old woman who came in and said, Doctor, I've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I've had blood sugar problems my whole life. And, I've tried to eat well, but I don't know why this is happening. And after he did his scan with his machine, he said, well, yes, you have type 2 diabetes. And yes, you've had blood sugar problems for many years. It's because of a virus that settled in your pancreas when you were a child. You were extremely sick as a child, and the virus settled in your pancreas. And she said, well, you're right about my having blood sugar problems, but I was never really sick as a child.
Mm.
He said, yes, you were. No, I wasn't. Is your mother alive? Yes. Here, call her. And she dialed the number. Hi, Mom. I'm at the doctor's office. I'm fine, just having a physical. But he said, I was really sick when I was a child. I wasn't ever really sick, was I? Oh, honey, you almost died. They lived in a small town. She had 105 fever, and they put vinegar socks on her feet. They put her in ice baths. This machine identified it 40 years later.
Wow,
And I'm
incredible.
like, this is my
Mhm.
first week, no, my second week in my education. So I knew there was so much more than
Mm.
just diagnosing and then prescribing a medication or prescribing nutrition that there was a whole world that I had to learn about. Then my ex and I, now I'm almost in my internship. My ex and I could not get pregnant. So by that time, it had been a few years in my study. And I called the 7 most famous holistic doctors I'd ever heard of and asked them what they do for infertility. They all told me what they do. I put a program together. We were pregnant in 6 weeks. My neighbors in married housing who had been through artificial insemination and hadn't worked asked if I'd work with them. And I said, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I don't think it's going to hurt you. Sure. She was pregnant in 3 months.
Mm.
So now we're 4 months pregnant. So happy, telling all of our friends in Chicago. I went to school in Chicago. All of our friends, and our friend's sister from Wisconsin had 2 miscarriages, and she called, can I come down and talk to you, please? Please, can I come talk to you? So I was treating people out of my dorm room. Yeah, and you're not supposed to do that, but I was just so hot to trot to help people.
Love it.
And there's
Mhm.
not much in medicine that's all or every. This was every couple that had reproductive system problems. Now I know so much more than just reproductive system, but at that point, every couple that had reproductive system problems, a component of what had to be dealt with was that they were eating foods they did not know were a problem for them, causing inflammation.
Mm.
You see, if you pull at a chain, it always breaks at the weakest link,
Mhm.
always. The weakest link could be at one end, the middle, the other end. It's your heart, your brain, your liver, your kidneys, your blood sugar regulating system. It doesn't matter. Wherever the weak link is, you pull on the chain, that's where it's going to break.
Mm-hmm.
And the pull on the chain is inflammation, without exception. The CDC tells us that 14 of the 15 top causes of death today are chronic inflammatory diseases. It's always inflammation, except for unintentional injuries, accidents. Everything else is a chronic inflammatory disease. Type 1 diabetes, autoimmune diseases are chronic inflammatory diseases, without exception. So it's critically
that is
important.
The root.
That's where you start with any health problem. It doesn't matter what it is. You identify how much inflammation do I have? And then you ask the question, where is that inflammation coming from? Because the inflammation is produced by your immune system. That's the job of the immune system. Mrs. Patient, your immune system is the armed forces in your body. It's there to protect you. There's an Army, a Navy, an Air Force, a Marines, a Coast Guard. We call them IgA, IgG, IgE, IgM, cytokines. They're just different branches of the armed forces there to protect you. So when you have excess inflammation, because inflammation is not bad for you, excessive inflammation is bad for you. When you have excess inflammation, you of course always want to calm down the fire, but you have to ask the question, what is my immune system fighting? Why is my immune system producing this inflammation? And I'll give you one example and then I'll pause, because I get on.
And I'd like to point all this to type 1 diabetes because, you've got my head just spinning right now with different ways we could go with this conversation. And at this point, the majority of my listeners are obviously diagnosed with type 1, as I was many, many years ago. And we walk around saying, well, we really don't know why it happened. There's lots of theories. I would love to hear what your theory is, viral attack to, again, our body was protecting us from an outside invader. And of course, the pancreas was at this point the weak link, as you had mentioned. So is that what you would point?
Well, in this particular topic of type 1 diabetes, every diabetic needs to do a comprehensive test to see if their immune system is fighting dairy. There are so many studies because when your immune system determines that dairy is a problem for you, and I'm going to pause because I can hear people's brains going, well, I don't feel bad when I eat cheese, or I don't feel bad when I drink milk. For every one person that has gut symptoms from a problem with dairy or any food, there are 8 people that don't have gut symptoms. They've got brain symptoms or joint symptoms or skin symptoms or blood sugar regulating symptoms. They don't have gut symptoms. So they eat the food and they think they're fine. So if you think you need to feel bad when you eat pizza, to say, well, maybe it's not good for me, you'll get it right 1 out of 8 times, and you'll miss it 7 out of 8 times. And you keep throwing gasoline on the fire, and your immune system keeps protecting you, trying to protect you, and here comes more antibodies to fight the dairy. And then there are 6 different mechanisms by which these autoimmune diseases occur. But the primary one in this discussion is called molecular mimicry. And what that means is that when my immune system is making antibodies to fight dairy, so the antibodies are like special forces. They've got high-powered laser rifles, and they're in your bloodstream. And your bloodstream is just a highway. Everything's going in the same direction, but it's just a highway. And there's lots of traffic on the highway. There's no lanes of traffic, so everything's bouncing into each other. How do the antibodies know to attack the dairy molecule and not your red blood cells or your white blood cells? Well, because the soldiers, the antibodies, have been trained to look for a particular signature, a protein signature of dairy. So they're called amino acids.
Mhm.
And so the antibodies are looking for these amino acids all through the bloodstream. And when they see a dairy molecule, they fight their chemical bullets to destroy that dairy molecule because the immune system has determined it's a problem. And then that dairy molecule gets destroyed and everything calms down. But then you eat dairy for lunch and dairy for dinner and dairy the next day.
And
so
we get used to feeling a certain way, don't we?
That's
we
right.
just, yeah,
right.
yeah. And
Now,
I think that's the number one block is we as humans, we walk around and it's slowly, those symptoms that you're talking about, they may not be evident, but they're showing up in other ways, our energy,
right.
You're talking about brain fog and all those other things. And just the fact that we're trying to regulate our blood sugar on top of it. So those could just be kind of kinks in those armors too, just trying to keep that.
Oh, there are so many studies on this when you read the studies. Mm-hmm. So I want to complete this thought so people understand.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the antibodies are in the bloodstream fighting dairy. And so they're looking for the amino acid structure of dairy. And they fight their chemical bullets. They fire their chemical bullets at that amino acid structure. Let's just say it's AABCD. It's just a sequence of amino acids. Well, unfortunately, the beta cells of your pancreas are made up of proteins that include AABCD.
Okay.
So the antibodies that are looking for dairy say, oh, look over there in the pancreas, boom. And they fight their chemical bullets, destroying the beta cells of the pancreas. Just Google dairy and diabetes, and here come the studies. You see it again and again. I wrote a book on this.
Really interesting. Wow.
Called the Autoimmune Fix.
Okay.
It won the National Book Award. I'm so proud of that. Because it's really a good book to explain where autoimmune diseases come from. So
really helpful.
Going back to what I said earlier, every diabetic needs to do a comprehensive test to see, is my immune system fighting dairy? I don't care if you love dairy. If your immune system's fighting it, you're creating more inflammation, and you're shortening your lifespan. Bottom line. So you just have to check. And the test is called the Dairy Zoomer.
I have not heard of that. That's fun. Okay. Dairy Zoomer.
Yeah, you zoom in on the problem. It's the most accurate test available today.
Is that something attainable? I mean, obviously, we walk into the doctor, our endocrinologist, and talk about a Dairy Zoomer test. They're probably going to look at you like you got two heads. But is this somewhat recognizable and something that's going to be easy to suggest?
What I always tell people: go to my website, download the information on the Dairy Zoomer. Take it to your doctor, show them the information, and if they won't order the test because they're just defiant and they won't, or their hospital won't allow them, you can order it on my website. Okay. So just order it there.
There's ways. Yeah, there
are ways.
Yeah,
and so that's how you find out, am I unintentionally throwing gasoline on the fire that continues to make my blood sugar regulation volatile? Am I doing this by what? See, the most common source of environmental triggers that activate the immune system is what's on the end of your fork. So if you have type 1 diabetes with elevated antibodies, the question is, why is that happening?
That's right. Ask those questions. Yes, I'm a big believer in advocating for sure. So let's circle back to this is a wide open question. What are environmental toxins?
Mrs. Patient, you have the same body as your ancestor 10,000 years ago. Your kidneys work the same, your gallbladder, your blood sugar regulating system, your brain. We use our brains more, so we've developed housing and food production and all that, but we have the same physiology. Everything functions the same. It doesn't change.
That's right.
In that shorter period of time of 10,000 years. Your ancestors, their immune system was designed to protect them from threat. That's what the immune system is for. If you cut yourself, the classic visual indicator that your immune system is working is it gets red, it gets sore, It may get a little swollen. That's the immune system killing bacteria so that the bacteria can't get inside your body and cause damage. The immune system is designed to save your life. Now, most of the immune system for humans is in their gut. Somewhere between 70 to 80% of our immune system is in your gut. The reason for that is that our ancestors, before agriculture, they were nomads. They followed the herds. They walked around all the time following the herds for food. So they're walking around, and their primary concern was to get something to eat. So they pick something up off the ground. First, they smell it, then they nibble at it, then they eat it. If there was a bug there that they couldn't identify by smelling it or by nibbling at it, if that bug goes through the stomach, then right in the first part of the small intestine, you have sentries standing guard. I like to think of the soldiers at Buckingham Palace with those big hats. You know, they're as stiff as can be. They don't move. They're dormant. Just like the immune system in your gut, it's dormant, but it's watching everything that comes out of the stomach into the small intestine. And if it sees something that's a threat, within 5 minutes, two things happen. First, it increases the production of a protein called zonulin, which is the mechanism for what's been called leaky gut. So zonulin increases, leaky gut increases, which brings water from the body into the tube of the intestines. It brings in more water to wash out the threat with the poop. That's what leaky gut is for. It's designed to save your life. It's not bad for you. Excessive leaky gut is bad for you, right? So the first thing happens is that the sentry standing guard activates this protein to make leaky gut. And the second thing, the sentry activates the major amplifier of inflammation called NF-kappa B. And that amplifier is like the desk sergeant in the police station. You guys go to this neighborhood and patrol. You go over here. You guys go over there. NF-kappa B is the boss that tells what branch of the armed forces needs to work right now. So if a bug is identified coming out of the stomach into the first part of the small intestine, all of this occurs within 5 minutes. Those ancestors that did not have a good sentry standing guard, they died from food poisoning. They did not reproduce, so their lineage died with them. Those that had good defensive immune system in the gut, they survived. They passed their genes on to the next generation and the next. That's us. Everyone today has that protective mechanism. So when you eat something that your immune system thinks is a bug, it's got the same amino acid structure as a bug, food, as I was talking about earlier, it's, oh, look, there's and it gets activated to protect you. There's no negotiation. This is designed to save your life. So now you get leaky gut, and now you get more inflammation, pulling on the chain. Now, if you read my book or if you attend our event coming up, what you will learn is that inflammation is continuous. Every time you eat the food, you get more of this inflammation pulling on the chain. And the development of autoimmune diseases, there's a perfect storm in the development of autoimmune diseases. This is from Harvard. There are 5 factors in the perfect storm. And the end of those 5 factors, number 5, is chronic inflammation in your bloodstream. So that inflammation in your bloodstream pulls on the chain. And if your genetic weak link is blood sugar regulation, here comes diabetes. That is the primary mechanism in the development of autoimmune diseases.
Yeah.
And when you hear the detail on this, when you read, not the science, because that's pretty geeky, but if you read my book, or attend our event, you say, wow, that just makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so then what you want to do is identify the environmental triggers, the environmental toxins that activate this defensive position. So what are they, to your question? What are the environmental toxins? The most common source of environmental toxins is what's on the end of your fork.
Mm.
Most common. Let me give you an example. In the Journal of the American Medical Association, they did a study that the editors said, this is an elegant study using sophisticated biomarkers to demonstrate their point. Now, the editors don't give comments or praise like that very often at all in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They just don't do that, but they did for this study, so I knew it was an important study. They looked at couples going to assisted fertility centers, and they ruled out all of the known risk factors for success of implantation. They ruled out alcohol consumption, cigarette smoke, exercise, no exercise, socioeconomic class, race. They ruled all of that out, and they looked at one thing. How many servings of fruits and vegetables are the people eating a day? And well, we know the answer to that. The more fruits and vegetables, the better. No, actually not. They divided the women into fourths. The lowest number of servings per day of fruits and vegetables, the next, the third, and the highest. And the results were shocking. Those in the highest category of fruit and vegetable consumption compared to those in the lowest category of fruit and vegetable consumption, those in the highest category had an 18% less likelihood of successful implantation. It failed 18% more often. And if they did get pregnant, they had a 26% less likelihood of a live birth. They lost the baby to miscarriages and stillbirths. Wait, what? The more fruits and vegetables you eat, the worse the outcome? Yes. And this was in the Journal of the American Medical Association.
Yeah, more exposure.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
But there was a group of women that were eating organic. And in that category, the results were the exact opposite. The more fruits and vegetables, the better.
Yeah.
It's the insecticides, the pesticides, rodenticides, fungicides, antibiotics that are in your carrots and your cucumbers and your tomatoes and your lettuce.
Right.
So fruits and vegetables are so good for you, but the food is so toxic today compared to ever before. Those are environmental toxins on the food.
Yeah.
Critically important.
That is so important. Yeah, that's an interesting. So what is your take? How do you eat as far as how do you source your fruits and vegetables? Do you have a protocol as far as how you bring them into the home? And
well, we do. And the really good news in the study is that women were put in the category of organic if they ate 3 servings a week, not 3 servings a day. Just 3 a week. And the results at the assisted fertility centers dramatically changed at 3 servings a week. And we think, now the researchers didn't look at this, but we think the reason why just 3 servings a week had such dramatic results, if you're eating organic whenever you can, you probably have organic shampoo and you bought some organic soap. You're doing the little things that you can to make a difference.
Right.
So we think that's why.
That makes sense.
So if you cannot get organic regularly where you are, you go to trulyfree.com and you buy their veggie wash. And when you come home with your broccoli, you spray it with the veggie wash and you dip it in a little bit of water and it comes right off. You've taken off 94% of the toxins on the broccoli that quickly. It's really easy to do. It's a
good tip. Yes.
You don't have to eat organic all the time. It's preferred if you can that you do, but just getting organic whenever you can, and then cleaning your fruits and vegetables when you buy them before you give them to your kids,
Mm-hmm.
or
Right.
you eat them, will
Right.
make a substantial difference for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know all that takes time, but you know what? Time is going to save us time in the end, isn't it? Pain and suffering. So yeah, I think we're kind of built around convenience and just grabbing what we can. But that's really good advice. I know I live in a great little community that has a lot of local farms, and
Yeah.
yes, so, and not everybody has that. I mean, I know this is something that I don't take for granted. So, and we do have a few that I buy from every week that are certified organic, and I think, doesn't that help as well? Obviously, things that we're buying at the grocery store sitting on the shelf, we don't know where they originated from, and the growing process and all that. So it's safer to know, and we can have these conversations with these local vendors, if we have a chance to see them and meet them and to ask these questions, and they should be truthfully giving you the right answer as far as their growing practices for their fruits and vegetables. So it's just about doing that work, that little bit of a front, on the front end, just to know what's coming in and being on your plate. You brought up a really good topic, because we eat a lot of vegetables. That's about 80% of my plate. We eat animal protein as well, my husband and I, but it's a good reminder, to let loose of that habit, and to wash correctly. What about, and this may sound silly and it's a little off topic with what we're talking about, but it does pair with what we're talking about. What about just simply rinsing and, say, vinegar and water?
I've not seen a study where vinegar and water will remove the pesticides and
Okay.
insecticides.
Okay.
It
Not
may,
good enough.
I don't know about.
Yeah. Okay. Whether or not it's is as effective as, say, this product you're talking about. So really good information. Something we'll definitely share here with the listeners, and it'll be linked here in the show notes to make it easier for everybody, along with the dairy zoomer test. I was going to ask you about, when you're working with people, and they probably come to you with different symptoms and reasons, but is testing your first step? Because I'm a big believer in gathering the facts first, right?
The rule is test, don't guess.
Don't guess.
You know, the way that most of us think about healthcare began at birth with what's the name of that box on the wall in the bathroom? We call it a medicine cabinet. We don't call it a health cabinet. We call it a medicine cabinet. So we're trained from birth that when something's not working right, take a pill, get rid of the symptoms, forget about it, and
Right.
move on.
Yeah.
That increases disease.
Mm-hmm.
When you think like that, you increase disease. Now, reducing symptoms is critically important to function, of course, but you have to identify, where is the inflammation coming from? 14 of the 15 top causes of death are chronic inflammatory diseases.
Yeah.
I don't care if you've had type 1 diabetes for 25 years, you're still feeding the fire every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so every single type 1 diabetic we've ever worked with has been able to reduce the need for their insulin or their medication dramatically over the course of 3 to 6 months, when they clean up the amount of activators of inflammation in their lifestyle that they didn't know about.
Yeah.
They didn't know that mold in the house can make your blood sugar volatile. Well, it's not so bad in here. Well, Mrs. Patient, if you go on vacation, when you come home, do you have to open all the windows to air the house out? Oh, yeah. You got mold, and you're breathing it 24/7, creating inflammation that makes the weak link in your chain so much more volatile. You've got to stop throwing gasoline on the fire. Every autoimmune disease is the same. I'll give you one case study, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
About 6 months ago now, my chiropractor, I went to see him one day, and I said, "Hey, how you doing? You seem a little low today." He said, "Oh, my son was diagnosed 2 weeks ago with type 1 diabetes." And I said, "Oh, how old is he?" He said, 7. And I said, "Congratulations. Wow, congratulations." And he looked at me, and I did it purposefully. And I said, this is great. I mean, it's terrible to get the diagnosis, but he's going to continue growing for another 10, 12, 15 years. If we can stop the destructive process, he has a good chance to put that disease into complete remission. There's a chance, but you have to identify where is the inflammation coming from.
Mhm.
So he and his wife were just scared to death because at the hospital they had told him, this is how it's going to be the rest of your life. You got to give him these shots twice a day, every day. Don't miss them ever. And they scared them. But there's nothing you can do. This is just how it is. And so we told him something different. I gave him my book to read, and they did the dairy Zoomer test and a few other tests. He was sky high on antibodies to dairy, off the chart. The lab couldn't measure how high they were. And the doc said, yeah, he loves his cheese. He always loves his cheese. And the doctor says it's good for him. It's good protein. Well, it's good protein, but not for him.
Yeah.
His immune system is fighting it. And so we put him gluten-free, dairy-free, added sugar-free, no sweet drinks ever, nothing like that. And we did one more test and we found out there was mold in his body.
Okay.
And they found out where the mold was coming from, and they remediated the mold in his house. Now, this is 6 months later, and I just talked to him a couple of days ago. He monitors his blood sugar multiple times a day, every day. He uses a CGM on the arm, and he has not required any insulin in 2.5 months. None whatsoever. And the endocrinologist can't believe this. Well, there's a little gap here, but he'll get worse again. No, he won't. No, he won't, because he's not throwing gasoline on the fire.
Yeah.
And we have had this happen so many times. If you can get to these kids early and you identify what are the environmental triggers causing the inflammation, pulling on the chain at his genetic weakness, which is blood sugar, and he doesn't pull on the chain so hard, he's got a really good chance of putting this thing into remission.
Interesting. Yeah. So the good news is that he was caught early, diagnosed early.
Exactly.
And was a C-peptide test ran just to see if the pancreas was. Yeah. So he was obviously still shooting out some insulin. So that was helping him. But what you're saying is that it kept it at bay. It didn't escalate to the body was continuing to destroy the islet cells.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And we never say you can eliminate your disease. No, you can put your disease into remission. For children, I can say that with confidence. I've never failed with kids. With adults, you can reduce the requirements of medication.
Insulin. Oh, yes. I'm a big believer.
As long as you're monitoring yourself regularly,
right?
Then you're as safe as can be. There's no reason in the world why you should take excess insulin if you do not require it. If you require it, by all means, means.
Right. But that's pointing back to lifestyle as well, which is what I help and coach women on. So that's another whole topic we could go into. And that is just realizing, the importance of all these pieces to the puzzle. And people, again, I think they get used to doing what they're doing. They get used to dosing what they do. And the end result is really up to them. So that's all we can do is help inform and inspire and hope that they can decide on, what their future is going to look like with insulin. So reducing, because it's in relation to sugar and carbohydrates, and which is inflammatory, diabetes or not. And, the less insulin we can inject in our case, the better. Because
there's no question that taking insulin shortens your life. There's no question about it. There's so much science on that. So the less that your body requires, the better. The World Health Organization tells us that the difference between lifespan and healthy lifespan in the US is 10.3 years, meaning the last decade of your life is not healthy. It's with a disabling disease. We want to change that. We want to shorten that lifespan. We want to extend the healthy lifespan closer to your total lifespan.
Understood. Absolutely.
And the way you do that is by reducing the gasoline on the fire. So you just have to identify, what is it in my lifestyle? Where's it? Is it the highway that's a quarter mile away? And when you do the test looking for toxins in your bodies, the test is called a total tox burden. And
Okay.
it's a urine test, and when you look at that and you see you've got elevated metabolites of mold in your body, and you've got antibodies to volatile organic compounds. We had a 9-year-old boy about 7, 8 months ago with celiac disease. And his parents were squeaky clean in making sure never any exposures to wheat. I mean, when they traveled on vacation, they brought their own cooking utensils with them. They were very serious about it.
Mm-hmm.
But they'd been to 3 celiac research centers. No one could help this boy. His blood levels of the marker for celiac continued to stay high, and he was not growing. Shortest kid in the class, 2.5 years. His bones were 2.5 years below his age. Bone age was 2.5 years less. And what did we find it was for him? This chemical called a phthalate. There's a category of chemicals called phthalates that are chemicals used to mold plastic. And he was off the charts in phthalates. Well, wait a minute. Where is it coming from? Their home, and he was off the chart in phthalates and in mold. And they checked their home. They had a professional come in. The home was squeaky clean. They checked the school. It was squeaky clean. Then the mother realized, wait a minute, one night a week he spends at grandma and grandpa's house. So they checked grandma and grandpa's house. The wall behind his bedroom, the wall had black mold in it.
Oh, interesting.
And so that was the source of the mold for the boy, causing the inflammation. But what about the phthalates? Where were they coming from? It was the rubber bands on his braces.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
So you got those out of there. You
Mm.
got the mold out of there. You got the rubber bands out of there. And the result was within 2 months, his blood markers came down and he grew over an inch in 2 months. They were so happy. But we identified the environmental triggers of inflammation. That's what you have to look for again and again.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. And I'm loving your examples and stories because it really does paint a picture. And, this is real life. Yeah. There are people that are being helped by this approach. So really, really helpful. Can I ask you something about respiratory?
Yeah, of course.
Coughs. And this comes from people in my own circle, that the chronic coughs, and this can actually be pointed to asthma as well, because I know this kind of, this somewhat goes into the same sort of bucket. But what's going on? You hear about asthma as a child, and then suddenly somebody's outgrowing it. It's like my theory is that it's still about the environment. There's something that they were exposed to as a child. They moved, something changed. So, again, that toxin wasn't in their environment to cause the asthma. But does that make sense?
It does. My wife is a really good example. She grew up in Poland, and she was in the hospital. The average was 8 or 9 times a year because she couldn't breathe. Her inhalers weren't working, and they had to put her on stronger medication in the ER. Literally 8 or 9 times a year, every year, for her childhood and teenage years. And she failed to thrive, to grow because of that. So she's shorter. And then when she moved out of the house, the asthma started to calm down, and it wasn't as bad. It was still there, but it wasn't as bad. She moved to Ireland when she was 20. And so she got out of her parents' house, and the bottom line, her parents' house, it was mold, really bad. You're breathing in all day, every day when you're at home.
Or sleeping, right?
Exactly.
Right, the most important part.
It's not that she grew out of it, rather she changed the environment. Now, but what happened in Ireland was interesting. Now she's 20, 21, and her breathing was better, but she still had to use an inhaler once in a while. But she went for a physical, and she had an abnormal pap smear. And the doctor said, well, let's watch this, come back in 6 months. And she come back, it was positive again. Do you smoke? She said, not much, a little bit, but stop. Okay, so she stopped. 6 months later, positive again. This went on for 4 years. So 8 or 9 tests, positive, positive, positive. One day the doctor left the room and she looked at her file and she saw the word cancer, early cancer. That terrified her. So she called her mother and she found out that her grandmother had died of ovarian cancer. No, I'm sorry, of uterine cancer. And so now she was terrified and she told a friend who was a nutritionist, and the nutritionist said, stop gluten and dairy right now, just stop. And she stopped gluten and dairy. Within a month, her breathing, she noticed, was much better than ever before. And when she went back for a pap smear, it was negative. And they've been negative now for 20 years. Never again has she had a pot. It was gluten for her.
Interesting.
And dairy and the mold. So it doesn't matter if you have diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, it's the pull on the chain that you have to address. And that's what our event is about.
Okay. This is a perfect segue. Yeah. This has been great talking with you today. And we just touched the surface on this topic, but it's a good thing that we got it. We got the conversation going and getting these ideas and getting our listeners thinking about what to be getting tested on, what to be asking questions on, to not assume that they're going to start, the different symptoms they might be feeling, that there could be a better, there is a better answer. It is all about finding the facts to it. So tell us about your event, and we're definitely going to share this with our listeners so that they can
Thank you. Yes,
join you. Yeah.
It's all free. It's all free. I've spent a year, it's just been over a year now, it's 13 months, traveling the world, 7 different countries, interviewing the world leaders on this topic of autoimmune diseases, inflammation, and chronic degenerative diseases. And when you hear Dr. Dale Bredesen, who wrote the book, The End of Alzheimer's, talk about how they're reversing Alzheimer's in people, or you hear Dr. David Furman from Stanford talking, he got the contract, him and his team, to identify why the astronauts age so quickly in space. And they identified that it's inflammation, it's excessive inflammation. And he talks about how do you identify where is the inflammation coming from in your life, or when you listen to Fran Drescher, the nanny, and because Fran had, she's a 23-year survivor of uterine cancer. And she said, my oncologist saved my life and now she's my good friend. And I asked her, why did this happen? And she said, I don't know, it just does. And she said, well, I decided not to dedicate my fame to raising money for research, but rather raise money for education. And she founded Cancer Schmancer. And Fran, she educates the world on it's the environmental toxins that are carcinogenic that we're exposed to every single day. A woman, Fran said, before you leave your bathroom in the morning, you've put over 120 chemicals on your body. Many of them are carcinogenic, not in the dose that you put them on, but they accumulate in your body. And then she says, why would you ever put poisons in your body? You need to treat your body like a temple. And she's just so convincing. And so everybody gets to listen to Fran talk about these triggers of inflammation. So this event is going to be 1 hour a day for 9 days. And it's all free. And you can watch it, and we're going to then have discussion every day at the end. Could you believe when Dr. Bland, the founder of functional medicine, said that a negative thought is just as potent at activating the immune system as exposure to the SARS-CoV-2 virus? So toxic relationships fuel autoimmune diseases. And you start to learn you just start thinking differently. And then you'll learn what are the baby steps that I can take. And every day we're sending people back to their healthcare practitioner like you, Melissa, back to you to say, go back and listen to another one of those episodes with Melissa on environmental toxins, and go back
Absolutely.
there and
Absolutely.
figure out, what might the triggers be for
For
me.
you. Yeah, absolutely.
Back
Really
to that.
good. Yes, yes. So when does your event start? What's the date of that?
It starts April the 4th,
Okay.
and it will be evergreen, which means it'll be available
Okay.
after
It'll be
that.
okay. Perfect. I was hoping you were going to say that, depending on when people have a chance to listen to this episode. So we
Right.
will link that. I'm so excited that you're sharing that with us. And this is just going to add on to what we've already talked about, because like you say, I just appreciate you coming here, giving us an introduction of what you specialize in and what you're so passionate about. Really do appreciate your time.
Thank
And
you.
definitely look at the show notes here for more information to get in touch with Dr. Tom O'Brien. And I will link all these tidbits, really important ones that he mentioned to make it easy. And yeah, thanks again. You are
Well,
amazing.
thank you, Melissa.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be with you. And for all of your audience, you guys have a weak link in your chain. It's been
Mm-hmm.
diagnosed, and you can strengthen that link so that you have a higher quality of life, and you use the medication when you need it, but you'll find as your body gets stronger, you won't require as much.
Yeah. Yeah. Bonus. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And yeah, until next time, we'll see you back in here next week. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in to the Type 1 and Midlife podcast. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review right here on iTunes. And you're invited to connect with our Type 1 and Midlife community on the free Honey Health app. Here we discuss the podcast topics in a group chat, a chance for you to ask questions and take action on what we share here on the show. You can find the app link to download for free right here in the show notes. And for free resources, you can visit me at abundanthealthwithmelissa.com. And your support means so much. Thank you.